So today we're all about left solidarity. And not just solidarity with our fellow leftists in the UK, but I'm talking fellow solidarity with our leftist friends across the channel in France. Because if you haven't been keeping up pace with the news over there, something very, very, very serious and very, very worrying happened. And trust me, if this happened here, I would be incredibly worried, because essentially what happened a couple of days ago, we'll get into the article in a bit, was essentially a couple of days ago, I think it was 25 former retired generals and about 24,000 retired servicemen and women, including Marine Le Pen, sent a letter to Macron saying that the French way of life was under attack and that, French culture was crumbling. Of course, it's the usual right-wing nonsense. Blame all the immigrants for essentially failings that are really the problem of capitalism, the very problem that the far right would not even actually solve. They would only even accelerate those problems. And while today, reading this, the article that we're going through, does for me alleviate the fear of a coup, it does not alleviate the problem that potentially a far-right president in France. And to all the leftists in France, you have my sympathies, but I know full well, and I've spoken of this how many times, I am envious of the left in France, because the left in France knows how to come together. And at the next election, the left in France has to come together. And I know that they will do that, because they have demonstrated time and time again that if it's to keep far-right people out, they will unite and they will do so. And I think there will probably be a conversation starting around now in France of where, the socialists, the communists, maybe the centre-lefty groups, all the lefty groups have to really come together and say, we have to run and get a candidate that is going to attract all the left and even pull people from the centre and even maybe over from the right over to vote for us, because the last thing we want is Le Pen to be president, because that could signal some real problems. And especially in France with how it works, Donald Trump, who was indeed bad for America, Le Pen will be worse or even worse than that. So, yeah, like I say, we're going to dive into it now. But like I say, before we do dive into it, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. Also down below, there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And thank you to everyone who does support me that way. So, this comes from The Guardian. The title is, "The fears of a coup in France are exaggerated, but a far-right president is a real possibility." So, a recent open letter to the French president Emmanuel Macron, signed by almost 50 retired army generals so far, and more than 24,000 predominantly former servicemen, was an occasion for many on the French left to raise the alarm, believing that a coup d'etat was either in the making or a future possibility. The top brass signatories, led by Generals Anti Martiz and Christian Piquanel, I think that's how you say it, say the country is on the verge of collapse because of immigration and crime, as well as Islam. Again, what absolute far-right nonsense. France has problems like any country, but these problems, they're not problems. Once again, this is typical far-right nonsense, and the French left, really need to fight back against it. And the support it gets from some on the left. They are angry at cancel culture and at any intellectual attempt to criticise the country's colonial past. What a surprise. These generals warn that if the situations worsen, their fellow soldiers on active duty may choose to intervene and take control. Marine Le Pen, the leader of the far-right Reassemblement National Party, endorsed the general's call. A survey by Harris Interactive, which found that 58% of respondents agreed with the open letter statements, stoked further fears. This gives the impression that the far right is stronger than ever, and some political pundits go as far to say that while Macron is predicted to win another term in 2022 against Le Pen, there's a very real possibility that Le Pen will win by a small margin, striking a thunderstrike across the world. Or maybe the whole story is a little bit exaggerated. Here's why. There's nothing new in a sizable segment of the military holding far-right beliefs and voting accordingly. In 2017, Le Pen took as much as 65% of the vote in areas close to barracks, compared to the 33.9% nationwide, and the older retired officers like Martinez, 72, and Pacol, 80, are haunted by memories of the 1940 French surrender to the Nazis, the army's defeats in Indochina and Algeria, and the 1968 Lefty riots, which they see as the swan song for a more traditional France. The paratroopers, the Foreign Legion, and Marine infantry units from which many who signed the open letter hail are especially known for their staunch conservative patriotism. However, the Defence Ministry quickly reacted to the publication of the letter with disciplinary sanctions against those whose signatories were on active duty. And there were 18 such officers and soldiers, a completely insignificant number compared to the 2,070 million civilian and military personnel who currently serve. General Martinez, who was born in Algeria, launched the right-wing movement Volunteers for France and plans to stand as a candidate in the 2022 presidential election, although it's uncertain whether he will meet the necessary criteria to actually run. His main rallying call is the fight for traditional French identity, which he says is threatened by Islamization, multiculturalism, and anti-racism. General Pequelin, who began his career in 1962 when Algeria became independent, founded a political movement called Celle des Citoyens Patriotes, or Circle of Patriot Citizens. After he retired, he was thrown out of the Reserve Army in 2016 for taking part in a banned demonstration against the immigration in Calais. Contrary to the suggestion contained in some of the over-exaggerated reporting of the letter, the group of generals doesn't have the technical capability to engineer a coup. This would require the actual support of active duty soldiers, at least the passive support of a few politicians, and the complicity of a segment of the higher state administration. That the letter appeared on the 21st of April is also the issue of in the weekly right-wing magazine Valeurs Altres on the 60th anniversary of the failed 1961 coup against General Charles de Gaulle in Algiers, added to the suggestion that the open letter was announcing imminent military action. But it's not. The 1961 coup involved hundreds of the most seasoned generals and officers on active duty, and the active involvement of at least 4 elite units of what is known today as the Special Forces. The purge ordered by General de Gaulle against the Falanist supporters of French Algeria was so strong it left many scars and bad memories within the military community. So much so for the would-be punchists, who will probably think twice before they go to the streets in arms. However, there is much to worry about when 58% of the population seemingly think the country is on the brink of collapse, and Le Pen is predicted to poll up to 48% of the second ballot of the presidential election. The Harris survey, which found that 49% of respondents would support the army seizing power, comes at a time of distrust of the president, who finds himself taking the blame for whatever he and his predecessors have failed to achieve, stopping Islamist terrorist attacks and tackling crime. The Harris survey was published a few days after an Islamist radical killed a female administrator in an attack on a police station. It also followed a huge crowd of 20,000 demonstrators in Paris demanding that the murderer of Salma Halmi, an Orthodox Jewish woman, stand trial. despite a higher court ruling that she was insane and should instead be sent to a mental health institution. The ruling sparked outrage as the murderer was well known to hold anti-Semitic views and shouted Allahu Akbar as he killed his victim. Around the same time, a gang of thugs who tried to set fire to a police car in the suburbs of Paris, inflicting life-changing burns for 2 officers, received mild sentences. Some of the members are even being released without charge. These events were interrupted by the Rassemblement National and the conservative right as proof that French legislation and French magistrates were far too lenient and that immigration and the crime were linked. The idea that the left and centre-right cabinet completely rejects. And it's true, there is no link. The situation in France was best assessed in a study by the progressive think tank Fondation Jacques Jusqueurs, which conducted that Marie Le Pen may win in 2022, provided she continues to become more mainstream. And only 43% have a very negative opinion of her, an all-time low. She would also need the conservative right voters to actually back her on the second ballot against Macron, for Macron's popularity is continuing to decline. In other words, while France is not ripe for a coup d'etat, the coming to power of a far-right president elected with the votes of the Conservatives is a definite possibility. So, like I say, it does certainly calm the fears of that, but I can understand if you're a lefty in France how this certainly would have put you on edge. And I do not worry. I obviously worry that this, again, as I said, could be a possibility, but I know that the French left in France is very, very good at coming together, unlike how we are in the UK. Again, probably what's going to happen tomorrow is be an exact idea of potentially what we will see tomorrow and the fallout of tomorrow, which I'm sure we'll be talking about in the coming days. So, don't worry, we will get to it. But yeah, needless to say, very unlikely the coup d'etat is going to happen in France, but the possibility of a far-right president is somewhat of a possibility. But like I say, I have faith in the French left, and maybe it's time that, they change tactics and look at different things about how they can, work to better their situation. Like I say, the idea to blame immigrants or othering is one of the oldest tactics in all of history. This predates, it goes all the way back to I can't remember the guy's name, but the original guy who kicked out the Jews in the Middle Ages. His administration was suffering from huge problems. So what did he do? Oh, well, it's clearly their fault, so we're going to kick them out of the country. Again, like I say, this tactic is as old as time itself. But of course, it doesn't work. It's not the real cause of the solutions. Like I say, the far right has a massive tendency to, shall we say, give very simple solutions to what are really complex problems and need actual complex solutions, complex problem solving to actually solve the problem. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link as well called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.